Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Legal Modernist podcast. I've got a fantastic guest on this episode, Rui Caminha. He is a Brazilian lawyer, but his story is just fascinating for anybody interested in what has become known as legal design. Rui refers to it as visual law, and we get into unpacking what design actually looks like in the law. He's got amazing portfolio of actual cases. He actually won Clock's the Leo project, the Legal Innovation and Operations projects last year. And we also go into what that submission process was like and what was the value of going through the submission process, because applying to the Leo project requires work. It requires evidence. It requires an actual client and hearing from the client. And he went through that, and him and his team submitted and actually won. They were a finalist last year. So we unpack that journey, but we also go into contracts in terms of the visual law component. We get into a fascinating conversation around what designers do with contracts, about working with the shape of a contract rather than the substance of a contract. We also touch on, is visually designing a contract practicing law? I could hear some people in the market say that it is, while others would say absolutely not. Regardless, though, this really sort of sparked an idea in my mind, like being able to not just create a contract, a good contract, which we know contract formation and management is rising in popularity and awareness that we can write contracts better, but adding a visual layer to it, it really highlights this question. Do lawyers have an obligation just to protect rights and protect the contractors at any cost? And if it takes 70 pages, it takes 70 pages. Or do we also have the obligation of making sure that whomever reads the contract actually understands it? So do lawyers have an understanding burden that we might not be filling or living up to when we're designing contracts? So we're going to start this podcast with Rui's sort of formation story, from lawyer to legal tech founder to then designing one of the leading visual law design studios, Villa, in Brazil, sort of what led him that way. And then we're going to sort of break down some other topics and subjects. I will chime in with these short videos just to kind of re-grab your attention and ask you to just really listen for some key things in some of the coming chats. So hope you enjoy this episode. Let's jump right in. All right, so start me again from the beginning of your legal career. You started as a lawyer, and
Yes.
you started your own law firm. I was trying to
Yes.
understand, was that a solo firm? Did you join another law firm? Let's pick up from there.
Solo firm. I was just coming out from the legal school, law school, and had another friend. He was already a lawyer, and we actually worked together in a law firm. Then we just started our own. So we're just two guys trying to do something different there. And we struggled a lot for the first 2 years, but at some point we did find our place in the market. We started growing ourselves in a good pace, and in about 5 to 6 years, we came from two guys to almost 100 people working with us. So it was a very successful. It is, because it still exists. So it has been like 13 years now already, and it is we call a mid-sized legal firm or law firm. So about 150 people working with us, among lawyers and paralegals. But well, in some point, I was doing well with this business, and in Brazil, we do have a lot of litigation in amount that's pretty weird compared to other countries. The number of legal demands, lawsuits in Brazil is pretty high. So, well, there's a huge market here for in number of lawsuits. And then we had a problem there regarding the statistics of those legal suits, the legal demands. It's so much money involved that the the traditional legal analysis of a lawsuit was not enough to predict the results of those legal demands. And what this has to be with myself today is because of that, I start investing in technology to develop algorithms to better predict those legal demands. From there, it's I started a new business, a legal tech called Juristech, that's starting to have the first prediction softwares in Brazil for legal demands. And in some point, we got so good on that that we opened our first legal tech. And that was when I came from lawyer to legal tech, and then from legal tech, later I went to legal design. So that's a little bit about my past.
Did you have exposure to design along the way? Was it through working in technology? Like, share how you found design or how design found you, and what was that like? I mean, because that's rare still. I mean, I know it's growing around the world, the interest in design and using it, but how did you find it, and how did you become a designer?
Well, at some point when we worked so much with the legal data and transformed that into graphics, and those graphics started having some kind of storytelling behind it, and we did a lot of presentations for big companies, industrial companies, uh, banks, and we use a lot of a resource called visual analytics. Because of this visual analytics, in some point, those presentations need to be summarized in just one page for the CEOs of those companies. Basically, the legal manager would see a 15 slides PowerPoint presentation. The board of directors would see five, but the CEO always had the time just for one. And this concept of one page, it is has been vital for us, because from there, in some moment, working with a Spanish bank in Brazil, we decided why not to replicate the idea, the design of the one page for everything, not just for the uh, presentations of the results, but for all the documents, all the legal documents. Everyone would like to see things in one page. So the contracts, the petitions, the manuals, the rules. So why not do that? And then we start doing it for this bank, and later on for Nestle, and later on for other Electrolux and other multinational companies. And actually, everyone liked it a lot. So that was when we came to the design. It started designing numbers. In some point, we start designing words. And actually, and today we do much more with the words than with the numbers, actually. And that was the how we came from the one word to the other.
How do you identify today? Do you identify yourself as a lawyer, as a technology founder, as a legal designer? And maybe you don't choose one label, but I'm just curious, like, what do you call yourself, or what do you call what you do for a living?
I I think I don't know. I think I'll start using legal modernist like you, because I like the name too.
I like that. I think
I'll
you
join
should.
that. I'll join that.
Yes.
I'll join. I'll join the movement.
Yeah, I
Uh,
like it.
and
You're
sometimes
welcome.
I sometimes I say lawyer. Sometimes I need to be a lawyer. Sometimes I need to be a CEO. Sometimes it depends. It depends of the moment. I do like the designer part a lot. I think the one that I uh, maybe I enjoy more is being the design, because the concept about legal design or visual law, as I always say here, is to make things easier to the other. So I do like this idea. I think it's very powerful. I'm also a teacher, so I say this to my students, and like, guys, the whole thing here is make the life of the other easier, and that's such a huge movement. When you see all the tech companies in the world, everything that has been successful in the last 20 years, it has doing something, breaking walls, making paths shorter, make people more connecting people, connecting ideas. So I think legal design has a lot of to do with that too.
I'm curious, has it ever occurred to you when you're redesigning a contract, which is a lot of the work that you guys do, going back to trying to get things down to one page if possible, but from 17 pages of contract and legalese down to something that's more human centered, more user focused? Anyone ever asked you, or have you contemplated, is this practicing law? Is is visually changing a contract and changing the text as well? Do you have to be a lawyer to do that because it's in essence practicing law? I'm just curious how you would respond to that.
Well, how we did challenge with that, and we found a good way to work with this. What we say is like the when we work with legal design, the content is here, it's already there. So the lawyers produce this content, the noun. We come with the adjectives to that. So we actually come together and not against. So in this makes a lot of law firms, a lot of lawyers to partner with us to work for companies, for example, and sometimes we work for these law firms because we say, hey, we are not going to work with the legal content. We are not going to change the concepts of what we are trying to establish here in this document. We are going to make it easier to be understood. So if we work together with this, the final result will be better for your client and for the consumer of that client. Basically, is that, and it has been working pretty well in this way. So we don't try to overlap them in no way. We basically say we are going to take what you did and work basically on the shape of that more than on the substance of that. Basically, is that. And
Uh,
this is a good way out for us too, because we also don't take the responsibility of the legal work itself, because that then would be a whole other thing if you need to go into it, into the to the legal matter of that contract, of that petition, whatever. Then we'd be a law firm for to do that. This was the way that we worked out.
I I love how you phrase that. I love how you phrase that. You work with the shape of it and
Yeah,
not so much the substance of it. Just
exactly.
again, you speak visually. So I think that was a great way to sort of frame that, and then it makes perfect sense to me. And I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been tested here in the States anyway, where we have various jurisdictions that are very traditional and very, some that are pushing the boundaries on what is the practice of law and what isn't. It was just an interesting question that occurred to me just in talking to you just now. So I appreciate you entertaining it and sharing your experience on that. Um, Moving on, I
In,
want to take us to where you were about a year ago today, as you had heard of, and I want you to share with us sort of how you heard about Clock's The Leo Project. We are about to open up the 2023 edition of it, and hopefully you can share with us, and some listeners can learn from you your experience. So I'll start. The first question is, you know, how did you hear about Clock? How did you hear about the Leo project? And what prompted you to apply? I mean, something must have spoken to you in considering it like, no, we've got to apply here. We've got to try to win this thing. So share with me sort of how that first part of the Clock and the Leo project story, from hearing about it to making the decision to submit.
good. Well, to that I need to thank Guilherme Kimos, the Chief of Legal Operations in TIM. TIM is Telecom Italia. Telecom Italia is is the main telecom company in Italy, and also has some operation in other countries, especially in Brazil. Uh, we were doing a very interesting job with them along 2021 with their contracts, the telecom agreements, and this project was very still is, I believe, for my sense, for my knowledge, is the most revolutionary legal design case in the world up to today, because it works with a market of more than 200 million clients, has a huge impact in the company, and the whole thing. I'll say later about the numbers of this project, but everything was very big related to it. So we knew at the end, after 1 year working on that, that we had a huge case in our hands. We knew that. Well, what we didn't know back there was about clock. I didn't know. Guilherme did, because Guilherme attended the 2021 edition online of Clock, and he knew about the Leo project, and he was the one that said, "Hey guys, what do you think about applying for this prize, for this event?" And we said, "For this award," and he said, "Okay, let me give a look at it." And when I read the the articles, the documentation about the subscription, I was very impressed about the technicality of the document, the how the demands, and I said, I gave it back to them and said, "Look, this is not just saying like we had a case. We need to prove a lot of things here. We need to establish a lot of links, informing what we did, how we did collaborate, the results. So if you wanted to do this, let's do it. But you need to know that it's kind of a new project inside of the project."
I'm going to pop in here real quick and just sort of reset what we're talking about here. So, Clock has the Leo project. I think if you gathered from my previous comments and the dialogue Rui and I are having right now, he's talking about the submission process. And the submission process for applying to be a finalist in a Leo project and hopefully be selected is a little bit different than what we're kind of used to in legal. There's some good awards and some not so good awards in terms of how the juries or how the organizations actually vet the submissions and how to make finalists. And with Leo, we ask for key things in the submission process. And so Rui's talking about that right now, and you're going to hear him talk about like how they had to really look at this as a separate project, just the submission process, to take it that seriously. Later, you're going to hear him why it's worth it. There's a number of reasons of why it's worth it. But the key thing is he's doing this directly with the client, with TIM Brazil, the telecom company. And that's one of the things with Leo. You have to have a client involved as a proof point, as evidence, as well as to get their take on the project and any measurable business impact they experienced based on the project. So that's what Rui's talking about right here, just that submission process and how he viewed it. And remember, he was a finalist, so he took it seriously and it netted out very positive for him.
And that was a decision important for you guys that are looking at Leo. Take it very seriously. We did. We understood that was a project within the project, and we did set up a team to work on this subscription. Actually, I was involved. Kathleen, the designer, was involved, and Regina, the manager of operations of Villa. Basically, the three directors of the company were involved on that. So we took very serious, and because we knew that was something also very important if we actually were selected at some point.
Was it worth it? I mean, obviously you were a finalist. Obviously you were in Las Vegas and all that. Was the whole experience worth it? And what have you taken from being a finalist? How has that benefited your organization?
It has been worth it. It was great for everyone involved. I believe it has been one of the highlights of my career so far. A lot of moments that I'm very proud of, things that I was involved. But of course, this one, to be there in Vegas, to be in the front stage, with other guys like Brian from Hong Kong, Katie from the US, you, and Kimos, to show we come from Brazil. It's not It's not the main country when you think about this kind of innovation. So it was it was something important for us as a company, as professionals, as persons, and also as a market, as a country here. Like when I talk about this, a lot of time that I talk about the new experience here, I did a lot of after that some congress events and webinars or workshops talking about it, and everyone gets very like it's like winning an Oscar, you know. It's that kind of the feeling that you go with the country that wins that Oscar, and you share for that. So that was the feeling in so many ways. Uh, I don't want to sound corny here, but it was that. It was very happy for us, and very important in the way to show that legal design is a serious thing. As you work with design, and in some ways you'll make it prettier, it'll make it easier, make it more like simpler. People can misunderstand that and say that you are making it like childish, you know, and it is not that. There's a lot of serious work to make it easier. So it's very hard to be a good to do good designs. Actually, very hard. It's but uh, it's still people that don't take it serious when you talk about legal design. So the Leo when you when we went to as being a finalist, uh, I believe that a lot of people there actually also look at it and said, "Wow, this actually works. This can be a thing," and we have been using this brand, this movement with us so far. It's been a great thing actually. I would recommend a lot. Just the process is already something interesting to be part of it, and actually, of course, if you are selected, enjoy it as the maximum as you can, because it's a lifetime experience. I will do again. In some moment, I hope to do it again.
Yeah, I'm
I
sure
like it a lot.
you'll have plenty of work and examples, and you should. I definitely encourage you to. Um, so I'll ask this: where are you guys going next, and how do you see design continue to grow? Are you guys growing within Brazil? Are you doing work outside of it? Let's just sort of give me what you're seeing in the world of legal design in terms of its maturity, in terms of its growth potential. Are more lawyers taking it seriously? Just share with me some of the observations you have.
Sure. Well, we are growing at Brazil right now. We did start this movement here in 2019. So since then, we worked now. We had more than 2,000 projects uh, done so far with 400 different clients, and it is a good market here. We do have space to grow here in Brazil, but of course we want to move to new places too. So we are start this year operations overseas. The idea is to start in the United States and in Europe through operation in Germany. And we believe that can be a global thing, of course. So basically, we have agreements and legal actions all over the world. So we do need to establish those bridges between people and the law in any country, in any place. And we are pretty, and every time that we show what we do to anyone, the guy looks, oh my God, it makes a lot of sense. Why not? Why not to use that? And today, yes, we do already have some international projects going on with Electrolux. That's a Sweden company for home appliance. So they have operations all over the world. We do all the how they call GDPR rules, the data protection rules for them all over the world. Ferrero, that's a chocolate company from Italy, very big. They do the product called Nutella. It's very famous, and we work for them for food regulatory all over the world too. And the idea is to expand. We do believe a lot in legal design. I don't believe it's a short movement. It's just something new at the shelf and will be over in a couple years. No, I do believe it's a better way to communicate what we have been doing for 5,000 years. We are doing communications about legal standards at least 5,000 years. So what I try to say, let's make it easier right now. And actually, if you come back 5,000 years to the Hammurabi Code in Babylon, it was a legal design piece at Louvre because it's actually a stone that you could touch, that you could see in one piece. It's more legal design than our documents today in some ways.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. That's great.
So it's moving forward. Let's do this because that's a lot of space in the world. And actually, more than just the legal design, we do believe in a thing called the information design. For example, one thing that I would love to do one day is an airline ticket. I don't know. I get confused with the airline tickets sometimes. Oh, for example, anything, like if you try to park a car in New York and look the sign with how many information you have just in one sign for parking your car, it's kind of confusing to people. And so many cases of information that could be designed. I like the idea, the IKEA concept of design of this information. When you buy something from IKEA, that the manual don't have words, but just images of how the things are assembled together. That's another thing that I would like to do a lot too. And also regulations for the less favored, for example, for immigrants or for people that live on the streets. The city of New York has a very good case on that, on how to make those, because of course everyone has rights, but a lot of time they don't know that. Uh, the law just don't reach them, and so this connection between the real people and the law is something that I found very amazing to work to, and that's a
Well,
huge space of doing that all over the world.
yeah, and I love so I will admit a bias of mine. I just don't like the term legal design. I think it's very non-specific because legal, what does that mean? I get it. We're applying design in the legal context. So when you just made the distinction that a lot of legal design is information design, well, now that speaks to me, right? Because we have information design problems in legal, but we also have information design problems in medicine. We have information design problems in our municipalities. Um, and that's a broader problem and it's a universal problem. Um, Same with visual design. How do we communicate information through the visual context? There's an accessibility side to that as well. And you've used the term legal design. I do because you almost have to at this point because it's become this phrase. But I find it very non-specific. And my fear is that when the non-designer or the lawyer who's heard it a couple times, they're going to picture like the pop culture version of design. And that is like design thinking jams and sticky notes and everyone sitting around brainstorming. Whereas you and I know that's like 20% of design. There's rigor, there's analysis, there's real work that drives the unsexy part of design.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to do the sexy part. So I'll step off my soapbox and I'll ask you, do you like the phrase legal design or do you have some issues with it as well and disagree with me? I'm curious.
That's a good point. And well, in Brazil, first of all, we do use a lot the term visual law. That's even more different. How do you use that here, basically? Uh, we see legal design as a broader thing, and at the top of this pyramid, we see like the visual law, the part more of the when you say visual law, you're talking about how you visualize the documents, the communication of law. And legal design would be how do you design the whole legal thing that could be documents, but could be how you design your office, for example, to work better, more efficiently. Well, none of the two expressions I think is the best expression actually. We are trying to move it for information design to be more clear about it. That we are doing is taking any piece of information and giving it a better design to be better understood. Is this what I'm trying to do? Of course, we went with the flow because it was being used in legal design. Legal design, some people began to write some books about it or articles, and the whole thing started. Then we use it to be to people at least try to have an understanding of what we do. But the main problem I think about legal design is the term legal, to restrict the legal area. I believe as designers of information, we could work in broader scenarios, as you said. If you go to take any kind of medicine, for example, that should be in Portuguese here, but it doesn't matter. You see, like those little letters, and you don't understand what you are consuming, for example. And there's an information design problem here, for example, very clear. If you're going to buy your house or your car or whatever, if getting married, there's a lot of design issues there to understand your marriage contract. So I would like to move for the information design because I think it gives a better understanding of what we are doing. And I will give you an interesting example of that. When we work with team with the contract, so contract it's something very related to the legal area. So this is why we did the contract because we are a legal design agency. Okay, but in some point the company knew that the bigger document than a contract is the bill, is the document that you send every month to the client. That's more important than the contract. And then what's the bill? It's a legal document or not? Yeah. In many ways, not. But in some ways, if you don't pay, it will be transformed in a legal document. So, do you know what I mean? Like everything is a legal document at the end. What's not a legal document? Everything can be transformed into a legal document. So it doesn't matter if it's legal or not legal. It's something that it's informed from the company to the consumers. And now you are working at the same concept of the contract at the bill. And the bill is actually a bigger project than the contract because it's something that we're issuing every month to all the 50 million clients of that company. It's a huge thing. The 80% of the problems of that company comes with its clients because of the bill, because the clients don't understand how to add up because it's so many little things in because it's not just telecom, it's telecoms, it's internet, it's cable TV, it's Netflix, everything is there in that bill. So it's complex for the clients, and we're working on that. It's legal, it's not legal. So at some point, it should not matter anymore. It should be just information design. It's better information design, for example.
I just love it. I mean, you just opened up a whole large market there for lawyers, as you should have. I mean, because one, doing that work, they can still be lawyers, but it also does something that most business lawyers I know want, and that's to get closer to the business of their clients. Instead of writing the legalese contract or the terms and conditions that are in the back of the bill that are usually like in some sort of a colored font that is not bold, it's kind of gray, it's tough to read. Like who wants to be designing that? It's like, no, help your client make the bill a positive touch point in the customer's life, not one that is easily dismissed or tossed away or creates anxiety or fear. Just that switch in the lawyer's brain to help them understand that they actually have a much larger role they could play if they so chose. I think that's it's a very healthy point of view, Rui, that you have on that. And it's very charitable view that you have because you're reminding lawyers like there's so much of this work out there, um, that not one group or could possibly do it. Right? There's so much. I mean, think about. I would dare to guess how many contracts you interact with on a daily basis, or I do, that are underlying, the apps on our phones, or our bills that we get in the post, in the mail, and all that. I mean, we're surrounded by it, and I would beg to argue that almost 95% of them could use some visual design to make them a little bit easier. So it's a vast market that you've just
A
shared and
huge
reminded the world
market,
of. Yeah.
a huge market, a lot of opportunities. Some law firms will have in the near future they'll have some designers work for them. Some other legal design agencies will be opened because the whole point is the communication nowadays is totally different from how those traditional legal documents were established. So this basically has 100 years concept of those same agreements, same structure. The only difference is because is they went from paper to a digital paper like a PDF document, but the structure did not change in those last again 100 years basically. And what happened is like the new generations, in our generation, doesn't matter anymore about generation. The whole thing is all the communication is through small screens with no little time and a lot of information at the same time. So how people read, how they understand, how they deal with those information is different from the past. So I think our job as lawyers is not just to establish the legal ground rules, but also to try to sure if people is actually understanding what they are consuming, what they are having as citizens, as consumers of products and service. And this will be very hard to do it if you keeping pushing 30 pages of long agreements that no one reads. So yes, there is like millions of documents. And when you go to the public area, for example, it's even bigger scenario because we are talking about all the legislations over there. Huge area to work. A lot of opportunities there.
You see why I love this episode so much. I mean, we're going to end it here, but hear what Rui just said. He's saying that the market for visual law, visual design of contracts is enormous. And if you think about it, it really is. In fact, it's so big and so close to what I do, both as a professor and in our design agency. It almost has me thinking of maybe we should go into that area too. Uh, Often content and how you're reacting to it. My students react to my content in an emotional way, and that can be positive or negative. It can help reinforce learning, or it can be a friction. It can be an obstacle to learning. And thankfully, most of my students always remark at my content's easy to understand and digest. Same when on the Bold Duck side, we could be just giving a presentation or facilitating learning and development, and 9 times out of 10 someone always remarks on our content. I'm not saying this to like flex or show off. In fact, I'm saying that the bar generally is so low in legal for comprehension and understanding and thinking about content as a means of communication versus broadcast or demonstrating my expertise and making me look impressive by having a bunch of words on a slide or on a document. That's not what it's about. It's about the user actually understanding what you're trying to convey to them. And so that's why this conversation is fascinating. Again, Rui and his team, a leading visual law agency, not just in Brazil, they're growing. We know that around the globe, the visual law, some call it legal design, which you've heard me say, that just it's so obtuse, it's so murky. I want to get beyond saying that. Visual law to me is interesting. Information design is even better. So this really has me thinking. Maybe there is an opportunity there for Bold Duck, or maybe creating a visual law 1 credit class or even an event at Richmond Law, where I teach. It might be really interesting. I'm curious to hear what you guys think on this. Everything we covered from, is designing the shape and visual element of contracts considered practicing law? Is submitting to the Leo Project for some of your projects out there? I hope you're thinking like, how might we do that? It sounds like a really interesting submission process. It's not too hard. It's just more thorough than some other awards you might have submitted to out there. But being celebrated by the entire global legal operations community, that's not a small thing. To really sort of thinking about all the different touch points your customers or your clients have with everything as mundane as your bill. You heard Rui talk about working with a telecom company and banks about their bills and redesigning that. Hey, that's an enormous amount of work for lawyers who have design chops. But also hopefully create some thinking and some ideas on your part. So hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll be dropping information in on Rui into the show notes below and more information that we covered here. So I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.